years about what she might want to have as a memorial or a service of recognition. And one of the things that she said was that I just want to defer to you and the having a Christian funeral. And then the only thing that she absolutely said, I really hope that there's a flag. I also wanted to just let you know that the music that we have been sharing with you, as Mary has been going through a wide variety of boxes and cupboards and things like that, is that we came across Mom and Dad's wedding service from 1947. And in the back of that pamphlet was a song list for the music that they played as they were getting ready for their service. So I thought it was very fitting to have that same music to be able to be played today. And so in honor of that, we shared that with you. We have gathered here in the city of Red Bluff, the county of Tehama, in the state of California, to acknowledge God and bear witness to the resurrection as we celebrate the life of Virginia June Beach. We come together in the recognition of our loss, knowing that because of the truth of God's holy word, our mom and our friend is alive and is well in the great resurrections of the saints. When somebody had asked me recently, when I went back to work following a brief respite, they said, so how is it with you? And I said, it's really good recognizing that our mother is bounding and leaping with all of her favorite pets over the year, and that she and her beloved husband are strolling along those beautiful streets, and they're basking in the glow and the light of their Savior. May God grant us grace that in any pain or loss that we may be experiencing today, that we find comfort. In any sorrow, may we find hope. And in death, we shall see resurrection. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. Jesus said, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Thus saith the Lord. Shall we pray? Gracious God and Father, may your Spirit fill this place. May your presence that was so evident in the life of our mother, grandmother, in-law, friend, be felt by each of us. Even in our loss, may the reality of her finding you be in that day of hope, a day in which we can rejoice that the one whose life we remember today is now in your presence. We are thankful that you are here with us, and we dedicate this gathering to you. Amen.
Amen.
We are also going to have the opportunity to practice good old-fashioned singing. And hopefully you can share, or you have one of the song sheets that was provided for you. And we went through over the years what were some of Mom's favorite hymns, and we kind of took a vote around the family as to which ones that we would sing today. So in honor of that, we are going to start with Great is Thy Faithfulness. And you can find that hopefully on the first page. And we do not have an accompanist. We would love to have Aunt Jill to be able to play the piano for us in the way that she did for years and years and years. And I often recall and basking in the sounds that only you were able to produce at the church where we were all gathered. And without an instrument, other than the instruments of our voices, I would like you to join in singing this hymn. Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Thank you very much. I know that she appreciates hearing the quality and the heart behind the words that you've sang. Mom had several passages that were dear to her heart, and as we were planning for this in the last few years, she chatted about particularly which ones that she would want to have read at her funeral, even though she kept putting that off. I'm not quite ready for that, she would say. Or she would say, someday we'll plan the whole thing. But she did allow some of the songs and some of the scriptures to be agreed upon. And they were very meaningful to her, and she hopes that you will also find meaning in this. Let us hear the word of God. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget none of his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases, who redeemeth thy life, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfied thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles. To whom then will ye liken me? Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who created all things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by name, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Now he that hath wrought us for the selfsame thing is God, who also hath given unto us the earnest of the Spirit. Therefore, we are always confident, knowing that whilst we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. And for the last scripture reading, I would encourage you to find that on the back of that first sheet and to read along with me one of her favorite expressions of connection, sometimes referred to as our Father or the Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
She would really love to hear that. She's hearing that now. At this time, I want to invite the senior son to come up and share the life, tribute, and history of our mother.
Knowing of no other senior son, that's me. So I want to point out Psalm 23 on the inside of this. This psalm, so often used at funerals, is actually a psalm for the living. This is a wonderful psalm. It's a psalm for our daily life. And for the born-again Christian, it talks about, even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil. We walk through the valley of the shadow of death because to the born-again Christian, the shadow is all that that person will ever feel. So, Psalm 23, I love it. Thank you for whoever put that there. Is that you?
That was Jack.
Oh, it was Jack. Thank you, Jack. Okay. Okay, as Dan said, I'm going to do the biographical timeline, and the second part will be some of the stories that she loved to talk about and that will show God's providence in her life. And obviously, as I'm also, if I get distracted, that's easy for me to do because I'm ADD. Got that from my dad. But she had some wonderful stories, and I'm a kind of an armchair genealogist, and sometimes I go down the bunny trails. But anyway, Virginia June Beach was fondly known as Ginger because it's a nickname for Virginia and because she was originally a redhead. Ginger was born on January 3rd, 1924 in Palo Alto, California at Stanford University Hospital. Born 2 months early, she was the first of twins, and neither were expected to live. But live they did. Her brother, John Preston King, who I had the honor, the privilege of getting to know a little bit because he wasn't really in our family, he was usually somewhere across the country. But I did get to know him. Wonderful, wonderful guy. I really miss that guy. Anyway, he passed away in 1985. He was in the United States Army Air Corps in Europe during World War II. Her parents are Sylvia Hackenberger King. I throw in the Hackenberger because I'm the armchair genealogist, and that's her maiden name. And Colonel John Preston King, Sr., U.S. Army. Her parents met while he was an undergrad and law student at Stanford University. And there's a story behind that if you want me to tell you, I'll tell you later. Ginger graduated from high school in Lindsay, California, and she didn't like Lindsay. It was hot and humid. And then the 2-year college, Notre Dame de Namur in Belmont, California in 1944. That is now a 4-year college. She was on her way to enroll at the University of California, Santa Barbara, when instead of registering for college, she stopped off a naval recruiting office and enlisted in the United States Navy. 1944, war was still going on, hot and heavy. The Navy sent her to New York for basic training and then to American University in Washington, D.C. for assignment in naval intelligence, working on enemy code breaking. After the war ended and upon her discharge, she was briefed by her commander that if she ever talked about her Navy work, she would be lined up and shot. And she believed him and never even told us about it. It wasn't until a program on PBS showing what she and her battle buddies were doing that she figured she could talk about it. While stationed in D.C., she and her roommate, Joey Lundblad, took private flying lessons at Congressional Field in Rockville, Maryland. Ginger attained her pilot's license long before she got her car driver's license. She and her roommate had an ulterior motive in learning to fly, as they both wanted to transfer to military aviation and transport Navy aircraft for use in the war zones. You may have heard of that program. We have the original response letter from the War Department denying her request because, well, the war was over. Darn! Returning to California, she enrolled at San Jose State College, where she met her husband, Freeman Hutchins Beach, known to all as Rocky. They met in a geology class and married in, you said 47?
I think that's right.
Okay, 47. Being an amateur genealogist, I've got too many numbers going through my head, so it's hard to remember those exactly. Rocky and Ginger went off to Reno, Nevada in the Little Red Jeep, where Rocky enrolled in the Mackey School of Mines at the University of Nevada, Reno. Ginger had fond memories of camping out in the Nevada desert during school field trips with Rocky and his classmates, where she served as the camp cook. Ginger became a better cook, and Rocky used to say, almost after every meal that she had fixed, that was the best meal I ever had. It was a great example. In 1951, the first child, John David, was born in Fallon, Nevada. For some reason, after David was born, I mean, that's me, but her beautiful red hair turned brunette. And apparently her hair was the same color as my daughter, Sarah, right, sitting in that 1, 2, 3rd row. Turned brunette, and thankfully she never held it against me, that I know of. Rocky got a job in Sacramento with the state of California, eventually working for and retiring from the California Department of Water Resources. In 1953, their second child, Mary Roxanne, was born. Sacramento is also the location of where God saved them through the testimony of Dr. Frank Clendenin. And kind of went up and down the valley. They were transferred to Redding, California, where their third child, Daniel Clifford, was born in 1956. They were transferred back to Sacramento and lived in Orangeville, and their last child, Timothy Paul, was born in Roseville, California in 1959. She thought each of her babies was the most beautiful baby she'd ever seen, and couldn't wait to see what the next one would look like. In fact, they actually wanted to keep going. But in 1965 is what brought them to Tama County, to Red Bluff. They transferred to the Northern District of the Department of Water Resources in Red Bluff, California, and lived in Derryville, where all four kids grew up and all graduated from Red Bluff High School. And Mary, Dan, and Tim attending Lassen View Elementary. The family worshiped for many years at Community Baptist Church on Roundup Avenue by the Fairgrounds, which is now Grace Community Church, I believe. Ginger and Rocky made many good friends there, and we all missed that great little church. She enjoyed the hymns and the preaching, especially Dr. Lynn Pace. And then she also attended for many years Grace Baptist Church in Redding. Ginger was also a registered member of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And that is a woman who can document direct lineage to a soldier who served in America's War of Independence. And as a sidelight, this soldier ancestor was a major in the 1st Virginia Regiment who served and survived the winter encampment at Valley Forge. We're thankful for that. Okay, and let's see. I think I'll leave that out. Because in genealogy, if we get into it, we find out that some of us who are more aware of it realize that it's we can be accused of disturbing the dead and boring the living. Now I want to turn to some of those wonderful stories that she loved to tell. As you will see, her life is a testimony of God's providence combined with her quiet but strong personality. And I was looking, is there a picture up here where she's by the Jeep station wagon with a shotgun in the ground? Okay, I missed that. But,
You just showed it.
okay, just show it. Okay, that's great, because I wanted to, that's part of her strong personality that she had, that a lot of people are not aware of. Ginger and her brother Preston had to be birthed by emergency C-section. This was 1924. C-sections were a relatively new procedure in 1924, so all doctors near enough to the delivery room rushed to observe. The procedure moved quickly, and the babies were handled a little roughly. As Ginger told it, since they were not expected to live, each baby was kind of delivered and then tossed to another doctor standing nearby. Even though they survived the delivery, they would not or could not eat in the hospital. Their grandmother, Mary Amelia Jordan Hackenberger, took custody of them, took them home, and here we are 95 years later. Virginia June King. Where did Virginia June come from? The name. Her dad, a career Army colonel, was called back to the East Coast several times, and including the state of Virginia. Struck by the beauty of Virginia, particularly in June, gave her the name Virginia June, because Virginia is so beautiful in the month of June. We kind of have an attachment to it. Tim and Cheryl lived there for nearly 20 years. We loved it so much, and because they were there, we bought a house there in Northern Virginia, and then they left. Now they're in Austin, Texas. Other stories she loved to tell were about her Navy life. After graduating from Notre Dame, she took the train to Santa Barbara, and this is kind of a recent history to me because I don't know how many times she told me that. And then one time she said she was taking the train to Santa Barbara, and for some reason I heard that, and I said, wait a minute, why were you taking a train to Santa Barbara? And it finally came out that she was taking the train to Santa Barbara to register, to enroll at the University of California, Santa Barbara, in 1944. That was the first year, for you academics, that was the first year that the University of California at Santa Barbara was the University of California at Santa Barbara. Previous had been the Santa Barbara College or something. So anyway, back to my written notes. Okay, instead of registering at UCSB, she walked into a naval recruiting office. So, remember, World War II, 1944. As she waited, there was a Navy recruiter was on the phone to her hometown of Lindsay, California, trying to get a hold of an attorney named John King. Got that? She walks into a naval recruiting office. Guy on the naval recruiter's on the phone to a guy named attorney trying to get a hold of John King. Apparently, this John King had handled an adoption of a young man who was trying to join the Navy, and the recruiter needed more information about the young man. Ginger overheard this and, shaking her head, said, "You can't reach him. You can't reach him." The recruiter wanted to know, why not? And who are you anyway? And Ginger said, because John King is my father and he's in the Army in the South Pacific. I mean, can you imagine that? While en route to Europe with the United States Army Air Corps, her brother Preston stopped in the D.C. area and they got to meet up. During this time, Preston told her, because he was also he was in the Army Air Corps. So Preston told her that if her airplane engine ever stalled, that she should push the stick forward and then wait and pull the stick back. Well, he didn't exactly explain why, but just 2 weeks later, while she was soloing, her engine did stall. All she thought of was push the stick forward. She pushed the stick forward, the plane went into a dive, and then she pulled the stick back. Nothing. So, still having a little airspace, she did it again. And this time the engine came back to life, which Tim and I and Dan and Mary are thankful. So, she flew her little Piper Cub back to the airfield and told her instructor what happened. That was before radios in the airplanes. This was all, I mean, she's told, soloing was soloing. So she told her instructor what had happened. According to her, he turned white as a sheet, and they promptly took the little plane offline. Ginger also loved to tell stories about her faith in Jesus. In Sacramento, God saved Ginger and Rocky through the testimony of Dr. Frank Clendenin, who worked with Rocky at the DWR, and I'm not sure, but I think was an adjunct geology professor at UC Berkeley. Mom became aware of God's calling, and while pregnant with Dan, cried out to the Lord to show himself to her. Shortly thereafter, a group came to her door, and she let him in, talked to him, and after a little while, she thought that what they were telling her was, quote unquote, baloney. Rocky mentioned Ginger's spiritual hunger to Frank, who offered to visit and share his Christian testimony with them, and there together they recognized Jesus Christ as their Savior. This was at our house in Carmichael, near Sacramento, at El Camino Avenue and Gun Road. And El Camino Avenue was a narrow gravel road in those days, and now it's a major traffic artery in the Sacramento area. I vividly remember this as a 5-year-old, because I was sick with a Coxsackie virus and thought I was dying with very painful stomach problems. I was on the couch in the living room as Frank talked to Mom. I didn't know what they were talking about, I don't think I remember that. Talked to Mom and Dad at the dining room table. But, you know, to this day, I have never heard anybody else ever having Coxsackie. I'll have to talk to Brian afterwards. When Rocky died in 1996, Ginger lived alone. She loved her Saturday morning opera from Live at the Met, brought to you by Texaco. Ravi Zacharias, David Jeremiah, and other Christian radio and television shows. She loved her various cats and dogs, and enjoyed all the wonderful roses that Rocky planted over the years. And as much as she loved me and Mary and Dan and Tim, she never wanted to move. So with the help of her kids and friends, Angie Miller, Patricia Busey, and Celeste and Adam Deems, she was able to live, thrive, and stay in her own home until the last 20 days of her life. So we were very thankful for that. Then on December 7th, the day which will live in infamy, Mom fell and broke her right hip. The surgeon I was there, I wasn't there when she fell, but I was there for the surgeon. The surgeon who replaced her hip told her about the operation, and that they would try to get her to that 102 years old, referring to an age she had mentioned to her. After a successful surgery, she was moved to Windsor Care Facility in Chico. There, after several attempts at rehab, it became apparent that she could not overcome her other health issues, which all seemed to team up against her. She was not put on hospice, but her pain was managed, so she lived to see all of her kids, some of her grandchildren, and many friends she loved who made the trip to Chico. And she has more grandchildren, and she has more nephews. My son, her grandson, is not here, he's in Virginia. Tim Beach is in Nashville, Tennessee, your son.
Yeah.
And I talked to all these people on the phone now. And Jeff King, Preston's son, somebody that mom was instrumental in as God used for his salvation. Talked to Jeff King in Florida also, and they all wish that they could be here. And I wish they could be here too. I would have loved to see them all. So she loved, so all the many friends who she loved and who made the trip to Chico. She voiced several times that she would soon see Rocky, her mother, her brother, and grandmother. In fact, while at the care center, she said that all she wanted to do was just go home, grab her cat Stripey, and go see Jesus. So, okay, and I am also a United States Army veteran. Are there any other veterans in the room? Okay, well, Brian, of course, United States Marine. What
U.S. Army.
U.S. Army, all right,
In
brother.
the 50s.
All right, well, my mom was a veteran. This is the flag, Navy.
It's as close as that.
So,
It's closer than most of us, probably.
Thank you very much. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Good job.
Some of those stories familiar, some of the stories unfamiliar. Yeah, there was quite a wide range of interests that Mom had. So as we open up for other people to share stories, connections, things that they remember about your friend or your relative, I wanted to just read words from somebody who was unable to attend today, who asked to specifically be a part of this, so we're going to honor that. This is from Anita Hawkison-Bacon, all the way from Alaska. And she writes, "Dear David, Mary, Daniel, and Timothy, your mother was a tremendous encourager, financial supporter, and co-worker in Stonecroft Ministries. Over the years, she helped support outreach groups in a variety of places in Alaska, and she has left a legacy. Your mother was a very kind and caring woman. Forgiving, she held no animosity when telling the truth. On one occasion, taking her to the Vina Monastery, we had an opportunity to turn the other cheek. She did so with such grace and truth. The party thanked her and Rocky for being such great examples of this to their children. Ginger forgave jealousies and selfish ambitions before she got bitter, while still maintaining truth and integrity. Many a visit to Red Bluff was a sheer delight to be with your mother and my mother, reminiscing fond memories together and hearing tall tales of Community Baptist Church life when we all were very young. Ginger would give her gentle biblical responses. I loved being around her because she enjoyed the presence of the King of Kings. After all, she was one of her daughters, or one of his daughters. We will join her and be together with her in his presence forever. To God be the glory. Loving you all with prayer, Anita." I also want to just share a couple of stories and insights about her that was just this precious little moment. There was a connection with one of the social workers at the care center in Chico that kind of sums up my mother in powerful ways. And so towards the end of her life, she was able to acknowledge a couple of things. So this young woman came up to her and was filling out a form about what kind of activities that she might want to enjoy while she was at the facility. And so, as long as mom was going to be engaged there, she said, well, yes, I believe I'd like to join in some of those in those activities as I'm capable of doing. So the young woman asked mom, did you work after you left the Navy? And mom said yes, without explanation. The young woman asked, did you work after you got married? And mom said yes.
Increasing kids.
And then the young woman asked, did you work after you started having children? Mom said, yes. The young woman asked, well, what did you do after you started having children? And mom replied, I raised 4 successful children and kept my husband happy. The same young woman asked if mom was religious, because she wanted to find out if she wanted to partake in any of that kind of stuff at the care facility. And mom said, heavens no. My faith has been so much more than religion. I don't think religion is too much fun. And God's joy in my life has been such a constant companion to me. I don't consider myself religious at all. So at this point, I also would like to invite anybody else who would like to share a memory, to share a story, to be able to just, I think if you just stand up and communicate that with us, we'll be able to hear that. Something that you felt like you wanted to come and be able to acknowledge Ginger. Yes.
So I'm Trey Little Johns, and I was living on a ranch in homeless. So I called Pastor Pace one day and I said, I'm an evangelist, I'm going to teach you guys how to talk about Jesus. And Pace said, I was praying for someone to do that. Come and see me. I would have never got the letter, and I've been a chocolate, she never got angry. And then Rocky and I take care of all the boys, so we were in good shape. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Yes.
I'm Glenn Pearson. I worked for the Department of Water Resources, and later I moved churches and was in Community Baptist with Rocky and Ginger. Probably the thing of knowing Rocky and working with him, I got to know him pretty well. And I got to know the children pretty well. Mary escaped. There was enough amongst the 3 boys, I think, to keep it occupied. But the thing that struck me is we had one time when Rocky and I were heading for a conference in Fresno. And so Rocky said, well, why don't we take our wives? And my wife, Kathy, and Ginger went along with. And we're traveling down there and got to listen to Rocky bicker with Ginger all the way down about, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold. And of course, getting down near Lindsay, I'm sure there was some bad memories, whatever those were. But the thing that always struck me, and I could never figure it out, but Ginger's gentle spirit always kept it kind of hidden from me, was one time when Rocky and I were heading out to the field, and he confessed, he said, Glenn, if I were your generation, and basically referring to his boys' generation, he says, I would have been down there at Haight-Ashbury. He says, I'm a hippie and stuff like that. And I look at Ginger, and I always try to think, would she be a flower? And, and that I don't know. But I mean, she definitely, she was very strong, and she was a faithful wife. And I just want to underscore the aspect of the fact in our culture and growing up to have 4 children and all successful in their fields is a testimony to a good mom. It really is. And she was, I'm glad I got it, that Rocky just wasn't the only person I knew from the family, because it's a great family.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, thank you.
I'm Jessie Miller. I'm Ginger's, I was her next door neighbor. I think it's safe to say that I'm probably the youngest person here. That age gap between us, it didn't change anything. I could talk to Ginger about whatever. Anytime I walked to the door, she was so excited to see me. She was so happy. I got big hugs. I heard a lot of her stories, and I loved every single one of them. She didn't talk to me like I was some kid that lived next door. She talked to me like I was her friend, and just like I was anybody else that came to her door, anytime, her door was always open to me, and I could come over and talk to her. And I'm really thankful to have had her around growing up.
Thank you. Yes, and she used to tell us about you. She used to really be so proud of you and share great stories about how thankful she was to know you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I keep thinking about roses. Were there a lot of roses at the house? Did Ginger and Rocky or something? Like
Always a lot of roses.
I thought there was. I didn't say anything in this so far about roses, but
You'll see them later. One of the stories about Mom and liking to be outside is that one time, when she was really young, about 83, I had given her a phone call, and the phone was ringing and ringing and ringing, and she usually picked it up around, like the 5th or 12th time. But it kept ringing and ringing, and remember, this is the old-fashioned landline, and she did not have a voicemail connected to it in any way. And finally, she answers the phone, probably after about 25 rings, and she's breathing, struggling, and saying, "Okay, I made it to the phone. Oh, that's really good. Okay." And I said, "Oh, well, first of all, what is going on? Are you all right? What's going on? Did you just get off the floor?" And her response was, "It takes a long time to get off the roof. I was sweeping off the roof." And that very next day, Lisa will know, the very next day, I drove up there and I took the ladder that was up to the roof and I locked it onto the side and said, "Mom, your days of going up onto the top of the roof is over." It was quite a story. Any other stories that you'd like to share?
I would.
I recognize you.
Hi, I'm Jen Beach. Bridget, sorry, I'm so sorry. No, she's my grandma, and what I was going to share, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. I don't believe in romantic love, but Grandma Beach, Ginger Beach, is one of my true loves of my life. The unconditional love and goodness that she gave all of us, every family members and friends. She is one of the most accepting, loving, intelligent, strong-willed, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. And my life I would not be here without her. And my life is I'm so grateful that she's my grandmother. And I cannot even imagine life without her. So, I know her presence is with us, and her love, and just the story that you shared about how she treated you, not as a child, as an equal. I think that's a testament to how she treated everyone with utmost respect, love, and inclusion. And so I love that, and I hope we can all carry that same spirit of love and inclusion and adventure that she had into our lives, and that we can carry forward her legacy of love and kindness. So I'm just very, very, very grateful to be her granddaughter.
Thank you for sharing
that. I can't believe she's gone. She was so strong, I never actually thought she'd ever go. I didn't know Rocky all that well.
I only have some pictures of him, just like I didn't really know my grandpa on my other side, on my dad's side. All I have was my grandmother's, and I don't. I miss her so much now. The house feels so empty now. It's not right. Just remember year after year coming up here for Christmas, for holidays, for using it as a stop to go to the Redwoods, to go to Oregon, to taking her with us to the Lava Beds National Park a few years back. What if see her, it's too bad that she didn't get to, die at home in her bed and without having to go through the pain of the surgery and all that. But she was too headstrong. She was going to fall eventually, unfortunately. I mean, she'd always resist taking meds. She didn't like meds. She didn't like being told to drink water, and she was always being told by all the children you had to drink water, and saying, "Well, why do I need to do that? I'm fine." That was always her attitude, was I'm fine, even though she was in pain. She didn't like showing it. And I don't know what I'm going to do without her.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much for sharing the stories, the connection, the heart. These are the stories about our mom, grandma, friend. Typically, there's an opportunity to have time to present a sermon at times like this. And in the words that are often misquoted from St. Francis of Assisi, founder of the Franciscan Order of the Catholic Church, who was attributed the statement, "Preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary." Well, we are not going to hear a formal funeral sermon, because the stories that you've heard about the quality of life, her faith, her connection, her living out what she believed as the good in all the people around her, that she would look for and that she would accentuate. And whatever story that she heard about somebody, she would share it with the rest of us and say, "Did I ever tell you about?" And she would tell it to us once again. One of her favorite verses to end this sermon, from the psalmist who said, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." Let us pray. O God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of life and conqueror of death, we praise you with humble hearts. With faith in your great mercy and wisdom, we entrust Gigi Beach to your eternal care. We praise you for your steadfast love for her all the long days of her earthly life. We thank you for all that she was to those who loved her. We thank you that for Jima, all sickness, slowness, and sorrow are ended, and death itself is past, and that she has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. Keep us all in communion with your people in every time and place, that at last we may rejoice together in the heavenly family
where Jesus Christ reigns with and in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever. Amen. We come to the end of this gathering here in this place, but we acknowledge that we will go with one another in purpose and care and memory of Virginia June Beach. We want to invite you to come out to the graveside memorial just as a final goodbye, if you are so capable of doing, and then also to my mom's home that Rebecca and Mary and Cheryl have been working on putting together some food to also connect and maybe tell some other stories. So in closing, may God's presence fill you with peace, and the kind of peace that passes all understanding. Let this peace keep your hearts and mind in the shalom of God that God intends for each one of us. Amen.
Amen.